Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over all of the spoilers for Zendikar Rising that have come out today being September 1st. So I'm going to talk about all the spoilers for the main set, I'm going to be talking about expeditions, and all that. Now, if you guys didn't see, I did 3 videos earlier today talking about collector boosters, the mechanics of Zendikar Rising, and the future of Magic the Gathering in 2021. And so I am going to quickly go over all of the mechanics as we see them on cards, but I'm only going to really do that the first time. So if you want to check out those other videos, I will go into more detail on the mechanics and my thoughts on them. So yeah, if you're looking for more of my opinion on the mechanic, I will give you some of that in this video, but the more detailed one was in its separate video, so check that out. Either way, why don't we move right into the first card? Our first card is Shepherd of Heroes. Shepherd of Heroes is a 5-cost white creature, angel cleric, 3/4 with flying, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each creature in your party. Now, party is a mechanic in Zendikar Rising that it works a little bit differently than you might expect. So the reminder text is your party consists of up to 1 of each. Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard. So, let's say you have a Cleric, a Rogue, a Warrior, and a Wizard. And those are all different creatures. You have 1 Cleric, 1 Rogue, 1 Warrior, 1 Wizard. And you play this, well then you're going to gain 8 life, because you have 4 members of your party. But, if you say had a Changeling that had all creature types, well, that Changeling could be a Cleric, it could be a Rogue, it could be a Warrior, and it could be a Wizard, but it cannot be all 4. So you need at least 4 creatures on the battlefield for this to get its max effect. Now, when it enters the battlefield, it itself is a Cleric, so you're pretty much always going to gain 2 life, but keep that in mind, that even if a creature is both a Cleric and a Rogue, that it only counts for 1 of them. Also, if you were to have, say, 2 Clerics, 2 Rogues, 2 Warriors, and 2 Wizards, it's still only, you can still only have 4 creatures in your party, and each one has to have one of those creature types. So, yeah, you also can't have, 2 Clerics, so it's basically 1 Cleric, 1 Rogue, 1 Warrior, and 1 Wizard. That's the max you can have in terms of a, quote, party. So I hope that made sense. If you guys still need clarification, leave a comment. I will try to help. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Next we have Kabira Outrider, which is a 4-cost white creature human warrior 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature in your party. So, not a super strong effect for the whole party mechanic, but in something like Limited, this could be pretty decent, and even if it didn't have that ability, it being a warrior means that if you are going for this whole party mechanic, it is boosting it in that way. So yeah, obviously not something that's really going to see play, but in a, limited environment, it could be good. Next, we have Farsight Adept. It's a 3-cost white creature core wizard 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each draw a card. Now, okay, this is kind of interesting. I mean, in a multiplayer game, this lets you kind of be like, hey, I'll let you draw a card if you let me draw a card. It's an interesting, it's an interesting way for white to draw cards by letting your opponent do it. We've seen this a little bit with Once Upon a Time, which makes it so that, Happily Ever After, which makes it so when it enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life and draw a card, but also your opponent to do that. So it's kind of exploring a little bit more in that space, and it's nice to see white get a little bit more card draw, even if it is, conditional and requiring you to give your opponent a card. Alright, and also, by the way, this card, going back to it, this also isn't that great. You are using a card from your hand to then draw a card and give your opponent a card. So your opponent is up 1 card from you by you casting this. So this isn't a great card, but it's interesting to see them move into this space a little bit more. Next, we have Cliffhaven Sellsword. It's a 2-cost 3/1, and it's a core warrior. So the entire point of this is that it is a warrior, and that's about it. So good for parties. Next we have Legion Angel. It's a 4-cost white creature angel warrior 4/3 with flying, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a card you named Legion Angel from outside the game and put it into your hand. So in a best of 1 kind of standard, I could see this being something interesting where maybe an angel deck, or I guess a party deck, although that you generally don't want multiple warriors, you want a warrior, cleric, or whatever. It could be interesting, but in a best of 3, is it really worth it to lose some of your sideboard slots just to, make this say draw a card? But I don't know. This one I'm really not sold on. I'm not a huge fan of the cards that are like reveal a card you own from outside the game. I mean, if you pull this in like limited, it's basically just a 4-cost 4/3 with flying, which isn't awful, but not really rare. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this card. Next we have Tazri, Beacon of Unity. It's a 5-cost white, legendary creature, human warrior, 4/6, and this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. So if you have a full party, this will cost 1 white for a 4/6. Pretty good. But you can pay 2 or a blue, 2 or a black, 2 or a red, and 2 or a green, and you can look at the top six cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard, and or ally cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So out of all the cards we've seen so far, this one really makes me want to make, out of all of them, a like brawl deck out of party, because looking at party, I don't see it being that meta. In terms of just, it's too inconsistent. You know, a deck that is half creatures, or I guess a third creatures, a third boost spells, and a third lands, oftentimes either gets too many lands, too many boost spells, or too many creatures. And now you're telling me I need to get a cleric, a rogue, a warrior, a wizard, and something that cares about that. That's a little bit difficult. So unless party really has some big applications, I see this being more of a casual, more fun, you know, and janky mechanic, and I think this is a good commander for it. In terms of like looking at it from a commander perspective, it is kind of disappointing. I mean, you're paying 4 mana to draw 2 cards, and you kind of get to pick those cards, so that's kind of cool, but it does require you to be in all 5 colors, and I don't know, I guess the 5-colorness of it makes it nice, especially since in Standard, Golos isn't legal, Niv Mizzet's rotating out, so we'll be left with pretty much Kenrith, who this is actually very similar to Kenrith in the fact that you only need to run white, and then the rest of the colors are kind of optional, because if you want to run, say, a party deck but don't need green, you don't have to put green lands in, you just have to pay 2 generic. I mean, theoretically, this could be run in a mono-colored deck, mono-white deck, so yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. It'll be interesting to kind of, I guess, see how it works. I don't think this will be anything really big in Standard, though. Next, we have Zulaport Duelist. It's a 1-cost blue creature, human rogue, 1/1 with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Its controller mills 2 cards. This is a lot on 1 card. I mean, for 1. You're getting a 1/1 for 1 with flash, which I would say wouldn't be playable, but it's also not an awful card, especially for limited. Now your 1/1 for 1 is also maybe taking, you know, you're preventing 2 damage. Maybe if they're swinging with a 2/2 or something, you can now, you know, turn it into a 0/2, then block something else with your 1/1, and on top of that, you're milling. So this is the ultimate mill card, not the ultimate mill card, but it's a pretty awesome mill card because, hey, you're delaying and you're milling at the same time, which normally mill has to kind of, you know, decide between what do I want this card to do? Am I going to try to delay my opponent, or am I going to try to mill my opponent with this card? And this one does both. So yeah, pretty good. I like it. I like it. I don't know how good it's going to be in the, you know, metagame, but I like it. Next, we have Expedition Diviner. It's a 4-cost blue creature, Merfolk wizard, 3/2 with flying, and as long as you control another wizard, it has, whenever this creature dies, draw a card. Again, I'm not super big on this because similar to the angel that got more warriors, if you're going for a party here, a wizard trying to get another wizard, I guess if they kill one of your wizards, you can still have a full party, but you know, the fact that it's promoting wizard with wizard, unless there's a lot more of that in the set, it's going to be kind of disappointing. I kind of wish it was like, as long as you control another cleric, and then maybe, you know, that way you have a little bit more synergy there, but we'll have to see what the overall set looks like. Again, these are just my first thoughts on these. Obviously, as the set evolves, I might be like, oh, okay, there's more, like, tribal stuff in here than I thought. Maybe these cards make a little bit more sense. So, yeah, as we move later into spoilers, you can have a better picture of what the set is going for. As of now, we're still pretty much in the early phases. Next, we have Shell Shield. It's a 1-cost blue instant, and it says target creature you control gets +0/+3 until end of turn. If the spell was kicked, that creature also gains hexproof until end of turn. So first off, this card is strictly worse than Dive Down, which is currently in Historic. So if you're looking at anything older, Historic or older, this card is completely useless. In Standard, it's kind of interesting, but I don't think Blue really needs this. They'd rather just counter your spells. So yeah. Next we have Merfolk Wind Robber. It's a 1-cost blue creature Merfolk rogue with flying, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player mills a card, and then you can sacrifice it to draw a card, activate this ability only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So I like this. I mean, it's another mill card, looking like Merfolks are going to want to mill a lot in this set. It's a 1/1 for 1 with flying that's also going to start milling, but then also once you've milled enough and maybe they're about to board wipe or they're about to kill it, you can kind of replace it. And what that sacrifice ability really does is say, hey, you know, it's going to be hard to deal with this Merfolk Wind Robber unless you can get up a flying blocker, and if you want to like spend a removal spell or spend even a board wipe, you get to kind of draw a card and replace it. So I like where this card is going. Again, we're seeing pretty powerful 1/1s for 1 in blue, which is interesting. Next, we have a Ruin Crab. It's a 1-cost blue creature crab 0/3 with landfall, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 3 cards. Again, we're seeing a lot of powerful mill cards for 1 in blue. This one obviously fits more with landfall, and it may not go in the other deck, but I mean, even if you're just, say you aren't boosting your lands in any way, and you're not drawing extra cards, this kind of equates to every turn mill your opponent a card, and it's a 1-drop 0/3. And what I'm saying here is about a third of your deck is going to be land. So if every third turn you are dropping in a land, then you're basically milling your opponent 1 card every turn. And for 1 blue mana, and it's also a 0/3, which is a pretty big blocker on turn 1, this is a really good card for mill, and I wouldn't be surprised if it sees a little bit of play in older formats. And that's, of course, ignoring the fact that you're probably drawing tons of cards. So this could honestly be 3 cards milled per turn, and then you could maybe get multiple of these. So yeah, pretty cool card. Next, we have Wind Rider Wizard. It's a 3-cost blue creature, human wizard, and it's a 2/2 with flying, and whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So just some nice payoffs for wizard tribal, so I guess there maybe is more wizard tribal, and instants and sorceries, which wizards generally care about. I like it. Next, we have Confounding Conjurum. It's a 2-cost blue enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So at its worst, ETB draw a card. It's kind of nice in a Yorion deck. Of course, the cycle from Theros that I can't think of. Omens. The omens from Theros are kind of better, but this has another ability. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under their control this turn, they return a land they control to its owner's hand. Cool. So here's what this essentially says. Hey, so I can play my normal land per turn. Let's say I'm in a Simic deck. I play my island, and then I cast Uro, and I draw a card and put a land down. So now I'm tapped out, and now I just put down 1 island. Now, that island's the second land that's entered the battlefield this turn, so now I have to bounce 1 of my lands back to hand. And so you could bounce the island back to hand, and you'd essentially be doing nothing. You could bounce 1 of your tapped lands back to hand, and you'd kind of just be untapping a land. So it generally means, like, hey, if they cast Escape Shift in Historic, and reset their board, well, that's going to be, all their lands are going to get bounced back to hand. So this is a very, very shutdown card for land. But I think it was introduced in the wrong set. This would have been so much better to put in either Core Set 2021 or whatever the next set is. And I'll tell you why. This card is atrocious in Limited. Think about what the set is. Landfall. People want their lands to enter the battlefield. So in Limited, if you run against a landfall deck, that's going to boost out a couple extra lands to then bounce their lands back to hand to then get more landfall triggers. You don't want to do that. In the set, there's a theme of land cards that on one side are lands, one side are spells. So now you're giving your opponent the option of, hey, you know what? I don't need this land anymore. I can now cast the spell side of it, even though I've already decided. Or the dual lands that you choose a side when they come in. Well, now you can choose a completely different side because you're bouncing it back to hand. This just does not seem like the set you want to put a land bounce spell in, at least from a Limited perspective. So if you're playing Limited, I do not recommend this card. Something about landfall or the dual land, like what do they call them? Modal, dual, double-faced cards. Those are going to mess you up with this card in play. So keep that in mind. All right. Next we have Kabira Outrider, which I already talked about, but I don't know why it's here again. Next, we have Blood Chief's Thirst. It's a 1-cost black sorcery, and destroy target creature or planeswalker. There's only a couple of those. Sorry, with converted mana cost 2 or less, there's only a couple planeswalkers with CMC 2 or less. I believe there's a Nissa that has an X in the cost, so technically it's a CMC 2. We have Tybalt, and we have Ren in 6. I think this could be a pretty awesome card, but it says if this spell is kicked, instead destroy target creature or planeswalker. So either CMC 2 or less or anything, and it's 1 mana versus 4. Now, my thoughts on this, the fact that it's not an instant, I think, really downgrades the card. If this was an instant, I would say this is Fatal Push 2.0, but I'm not sure how much play it'll see as a sorcery. There are lots of shenanigans right now with Embercleaves and all that, and you really need to be able to interact at instant speed. So I think that, for that reason, this isn't going to be that played, but it might be nice in something like Brawl. Next we have Acquisitions Expert. It's a 2-cost black creature, human rogue, 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals a number of cards from their hand equal to the number of creatures in your party. You choose one of those cards, that player discards that card. So, this is kind of a different play on the, look at your hand thing. So instead of looking at your entire hand, or your opponent's entire hand and then choosing a card, your opponent gets to choose what cards you see, which I think is a lot more fair. And if you have a full party, you get to look at 4 cards from their hand, but you still only choose 1. So if they have, some, 5 cards in hand, they can protect a card from you choosing to discard it. Yeah, and also you can make them discard lands with this, because it does not say non-land. They just have to choose not to show you a land if they want to keep it. So yeah, and by the way, at its worst, this will let them reveal 1 card. At its worst, this is a 2-cost 1/2 that says target opponent discards a card, which is pretty awesome. I mean, we have 2-cost 1/1s that do that. This is a little bit more convoluted, but this can also be better if you're in, say, a different deck that has Clerics, Warriors, and Wizards. Next, we have Polacca Predation. It's a 3-cost black sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it with CMC 3 or greater. That player discards a card. And then it's Polacca Caverns, which it enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap and add black. I think this card is really awesome. There are, at least in Historic and a little bit in Standard, decks that just love to strip your entire hand down to nothing fairly quickly. But the issue is, after they do that, sometimes they keep drawing those hand disruption spells and they don't need them. Or maybe your opponent has Luris and you realize, oh wait, this card will literally never hit anything. So if that's the case, then you can just play it as a land. And I just think the concept of this is very awesome. It's kind of adventure from Throne of Eldraine, but instead of creatures, there's lands. So I like this card, especially because it's the type of spell that you may not want to cast at the time. You may just want the land. So I like it. Next, we have a Coveted Prize. It's a 5-cost black sorcery, and it says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Okay, I think this is an awesome card. First off, it's a card that, if you're running party, is pretty good. I mean, say you don't even need to have a whole party. Say you have 2 people in your party, well, this is essentially 2 and a black, search your library for a card. But if you have a full party, you can search your library for something with CMC 4 or less and just kind of cast it, or search for anything. And why I think this is a good card is because, well, I'm sure there are tons of people out there who look at this card and ignore the party part, and they're just like, I like this card because it lets me search my library for a card, it's a tutor, and the party part can just be ignored. And if you happen to have a Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, or Wizard, it happens to cost a little bit less. So, yeah. Next, we have Drana, the Last Blood Chief. It's a 5-cost black legendary creature, vampire cleric, with flying, and when it attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in your graveyard, and you return it to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. The creature is a vampire in addition to its other types, so you get to resurrect something for free every single turn, but your opponents get to choose what it is. So if you have utility creatures, they're going to choose to bring those back first before they start bringing back the Ulamogs and all of that. So I like the way this plays. It'll be interesting to see. Next, we have Growtog Bug Catcher. It's a 2-cost red creature goblin warrior. When it enters when it attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each creature in your party. It is a warrior, so it's a 2/2 for 2 with trample, but it can be better. So again, in limited, can be pretty awesome. Next, we have Spitfire Lagic. It's a 4-cost red creature lizard, and when a land enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So you're going to be able to turn lands into damage. I don't know how much play at 4 this will really see in any red decks, but in like a limited game, those last little bits of damage can be hard to do, so this may be able to do it for you. Also, in any decks that like to play lots of lands, this may become pretty good. Next, we have Valikute Awakening. It's a 3-cost red instant. Put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. So, this is kind of a Wheel of Fortune effect. You know, it's Wheel of Fortune in the terms of, hey, you're kind of getting rid of cards then drawing that many, but it's only affecting you, which I would say could be an upside. I mean, think about it. Do you really want to give your opponent 7 cards? You're not discarding them, which I think is a major factor here. Some decks are going to like that more, some decks are going to like that less. It's an instant, and it has the land option. This is insane. Also, it's draw that many cards plus 1, not draw 7. So sorry, like it's not Wheel of Fortune where you're just going up to 7, but it is allowing you to cycle your entire hand. I'm not trying to say this is better than Wheel of Fortune. I'm just trying to say this is a very similar card, costing 3, kind of letting you cycle your hand. And for me, this makes me excited for like a Riel Brawl deck that actually this doesn't discard. Sorry, a Locus God like Historic Brawl deck or something that cares about when you draw cards. This just seems really awesome. And if you don't need it at the time, like, or you like your hand, or it's the only card in your hand, you can just play it as a land. So pretty cool. Also, by the way, another advantage this has, you don't have to get rid of all your cards, unlike some other wheels that, you know, make you get rid of all your cards. So this essentially is pay 3, draw 1, but it's cycling your whole hand or part of your hand. It's just, I like this card. Next, we have Tajiru Blightblade. It's a 1-cost 1/1 Death Toucher in green. It's an elf, which is concerning for Historic, but that's about it. Might of Marasa, it's a 2-cost green instant with kicker, 2 and a green. Target creature gets +3/+3, but if this was kicked, +5/+5. Very generic, very common. Gnarled Colony, it's a 2-cost green creature beast with kicker 3, so it's either cost 2 or 5. If you pay it 2, it's a 2/2. For 2, that gives each creature you control a +1/+1 counter and a trample. If you pay 5, you get a 4/4/4/5 that gives everything trample, and it itself has trample. So you kind of have to look at it. I like it for limited. Early on, it can be a creature. Later on, it can be a creature. Pretty good. Next, we have Tajiru Paragon. It's a 2-cost green creature elf, and it is also a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. So it can be any member of your party, which is awesome. It has kicker 3, and when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, reveal the top card of your 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature that shares a creature type with it from among them and put it into your hand. So this is definitely a party card. You're going to play it. It can fill any slot, and it's going to help you get more of those slots. These are the kind of cards that party needs to become somewhat playable. Next, we have Lotus Cobra. This was last reprinted in Iconic Masters, and it's a 2-cost green creature snake, 2/1, and when a land enters the battlefield, you may add 1 mana of any color. Remember how I was talking about Scape Shift in Historic? Well, now you Shape Shift, you get Scape Shift. You get a bunch of mana now to do a bunch of things. Just the amount of land ramp in both Standard, Historic, even going back into older formats is kind of insane. Now, for especially Standard and Historic, where this is brand new to them, this is going to be insane, and it's probably going to cost something to have to be banned with the land decks. I just don't see this going well, but I would love to be wrong. Next, we have Cleric of Life's Bond. It's a 2-cost white and black creature vampire cleric, 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, put a counter on it. So it's a slightly worse than Johnny's Pridemate, and it's whenever another cleric. But yeah, it's slightly worse than a Johnny's Pridemate, except it's a vampire and it's a cleric, which means it has those synergies. And so yeah, keep that in mind. Next, we have Zareth San, the Trickster. It's a 5-cost blue and black legendary creature, Merfolk Rogue, 4/4 with flash, and it says, pay 4, return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand. Put Zareth from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So it's kind of a ninjutsu kind of thing, where you are taking the creature that was unblocked and then swapping it out and be like, haha, I'm actually hitting you with this. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So just a permanent, meaning if they have lands like Fabled Passage, if they have any of that, you just get a hold of it. And I think this is really awesome. I hope I get 4 of, because if I do, I'm building a deck around it, and I'll probably actually do a video on it on this channel. This is a really fun card that kind of makes you play your opponent's strategy, which is fun. Next we have Spoils of Adventure. It's a 6-cost white and blue instant, and it says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party, so it could cost just 2, and then you gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. I would say you probably want to have at least 2 creatures. I mean, paying 4 to gain 3 life and draw 3 cards is a pretty good deal, so I'd say you probably want to have about 2 creatures in your party to make this worthwhile. Next, we have Marasa Root Grazer. It's a green and a white for a creature beast, 2/3 with vigilance, and you can tap and put a basic land from your hand onto the battlefield, so more ramp. It also doesn't come in tapped, which I think it should have come in tapped. And then you can tap and return target basic land you control to its owner's hand, so you can kind of just, oh, I didn't draw a land this turn, and I have a landfall trigger I need. Basic land back to hand, back on the battlefield. It also kind of untaps a land for you if you don't have a land to play that turn. So, yeah, pretty good card. It's kind of rampy in some situations. I mean, it's rampy. Both abilities can kind of ramp. Next, we have Aura Skyclave Hierophant. It's a 4-cost white and black legendary creature, core cleric, 3/3 with lifelink, and when it or another cleric you control dies, return target cleric card with CMC less than that from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if a 4-cost cleric dies, you can search your library or search your graveyard for a 3-cost cleric. Then when that dies, you can search your library for a 2-cost, or your graveyard, sorry, not library, for a 2-cost, and then 1-cost, and then when that dies, there's probably nothing lower than that in your graveyard. So this is kind of when you kill one of my clerics, they're just going to get knocked down a little bit. And I think that's really cool. The only issue I have with it is that obviously Orath is going to be the one that dies first because they just want to get rid of it. Now that means you get 1 trigger off of it because Orath affects himself. But yeah, this is, by the way, the box topper, but it is no longer exclusive to just the box topper. This art version of it is only on the box topper, but the normal art version of it can be found in the set, which is pretty awesome. Next, we have Linvala Shield of Seagate. It's a 3-cost white and blue legendary creature, Angel Wizard, with flying, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, tap something your opponents control. It can't, or I guess not tap, but until your next turn, it can't attack, block, and its abilities can't be activated, and that's any non-land permanent, so you can do that to a Planeswalker if you want, and its abilities can't be activated. You can sacrifice Linvala, and then choose Hexproof or Indestructible, and all your creatures gain either. That last ability is pretty powerful. I mean, Hexproof if you're being targeted by single target, exile removal, or Indestructible if you're being board wiped. Just a pretty awesome card that's very kind of controlling and saying, hey, I'm going to stop you, and you can't stop me. So, pretty cool. Next, we have Nissa of Shadowed Bows. It's a 4-cost black and green 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Nissa. Now, this one was leaked a little bit ago, but when a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a loyalty counter on her. So, that would be kind of interesting if that was the only way, to upgrade her loyalty. But no, she also has a +1 that says, untap target land you control. You may have it become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste and menace until end of turn. It's still a land. Now, what I like here, first off, it becomes a land until end of turn, not permanently. Second, she doesn't double any mana. Third, it's a may. You don't have to make your land become a creature. You can just use that as a +1 untap target land. Now, looking at her, she's now a Golgari Planeswalker. She used to be mono green, then she became Simic, mono green, then Golgari. And so we'll have to see why. There's going to be some story elements released tomorrow, so maybe they'll talk about it there. But then she has an ultimate. You may put a creature card with CMC cost less than CMC, less than or equal to the number of lands you control onto the battlefield from your hand or graveyard with 2+1/+1 counters. So kind of free cast something. It's kind of like a 1-turn Fires of Invention that can also reach your graveyard. I think this one is much more balanced than the old Nissa. I could really see it becoming part of the meta, but we will really have to see what that meta looks like. Also, by the way, the menace on the lands is kind of interesting and may change how this works, how I'm thinking it'll work. Next, we have Omniph, Locus of Creation. It's a red, a green, a white, and a blue for a legendary creature, elemental 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and then it has landfall. So when your first land for a turn enters the battlefield, you get 4 life. When the second one enters, you get red, green, white, blue. And when it's the third time that a land has entered the battlefield, you deal 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker your opponent you don't control. So yeah, pretty powerful. You're going to be gaining life, adding mana, and killing your opponent's planeswalkers and them. So just playing lands. Now, after your third land, he does nothing. He just kind of sits there. But it's definitely a fun little commander that I'm excited to build around. And next we have lands. So this is the rare lands for the set. So essentially what they are is they are modal. So you can choose to play either side, but once you play it, there's no swapping it. So unlike normal double-faced cards, you normally always play the left and then have to swap it to the right. But here, you play the left or the right, and then, you know, that's it. Now, I wish it was a little bit more clear that you could play them that way, because I'm sure there are going to be people who are very confused. Also, playing with these in paper seems like a nightmare in terms of, you know, swapping things around in sleeves, but for digital, will be pretty easy. But just in paper, I do worry about it. The colors are black, blue, black, white, blue, red, green, white, white, red, and green, red. So you might be wondering to yourself, hey, why are there 6 of those? Well, why are there not normally 5? Well, Mark Rosewater did say that the other 4 are coming soon. So I expect them in either Commander Legends or, I don't know, maybe I already forgot the name of it. This Winter Viking set, maybe. We'll have to really see, but expect the ones that are missing to be coming soon. Alright, so those are all the main spoilers. Now, really quickly, I'm going to go through the expeditions. I'm going to do this fairly quickly. So here are what we have. So we have the battle lands from Battle Bond, and I really love the art, and I like this frame much more than the other expeditions. I like the fragmentation. It's a little bit more full arty. I just like the way it looks. So yeah, we have these lands. We have all of the fetch lands, which is really nice. We have 2 of the fast lands, which I'm not a great card, obviously. I mean, it's not awful, but it's also not exactly what I was looking for. The other 3 have yet to be spoiled. They will probably be spoiled by tomorrow, so when that happens, I will talk about it tomorrow. And then we have individual cards. Wasteland, Ancient Tomb, Cavern of Souls, Prismatic Vista. So all 4 of those cards are really awesome. Some of them let you ramp, some of them are very good color fixing. They're just very awesome cards that needed kind of a reprint, and it's nice to see more alternate arts. Alright, I'm sorry I sped up there at the end. This video is already over half an hour long. There's been lots of details today. I want you guys to leave your comments on not all of these cards, there's a ton of cards. Leave your comments on your favorite cards and what you've been thinking about Zendikar Rising so far. If you enjoyed, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.